Good evening, folks. As you may have seen on Suspicious Observers yesterday, we did a story with Billy from Mr. Too Tough. Suspicious Observers and me, Suspect Sky, did a special breaking news report on the very strange UFO in San Diego. Definitely one of the best I've seen in a long time. And I wanted to do a follow-up video to take a look at a few of the more interesting details of it that I was able to discover during, the last 24 hours or so of analysis. So anyway, here's the original news article from NBC 7, I think. Well, the Sun Times is the newspaper reporting it here, but it was originally from NBC 7, which is the local news channel in San Diego, talking about strange lights and whatnot. And this is actually kind of interesting. So this photo shows up a lot when searching for this news story, and I'm not sure if it's related to the video that was actually shot and broadcasted by NBC7, if this is just kind of a generic UFO photo, or if this is actually something that was seen earlier in the day that just was not captured, or early in the evening that just was not captured by the video itself. Yeah, so there's some speculation as to this, and I'm not really sure. But anyway, so Larry Fox is the person that submitted these pictures to NBC7. So this is the original video, and it says it was taken by our NBC7 crew. And I think that's very, very, very important. There's been a lot of debunking going on. People immediately jump and say that this is a reflection. This is not, this is a hoax. Somebody released a bunch of balloons or something like that, which might be possible, but I think it's very important to say that it was a news crew itself that filmed this video in response to, I'm guessing, is this photograph submitted by this viewer. So the source video itself gains a lot of credibility because it's filmed by an actual, professional news crew. So that being said, let's go ahead here and just watch this real quick. And I'm going to try to have the sound enabled because there is some talk in the background. If I remember right, it's been a couple hours since I've watched this, but if I remember right, I think it's Spanish or some other foreign language. So I don't know if anybody is fluent in this language. It would be great to hear in the comments what they're actually saying. But anyway, I'll go ahead and play this here.
Burda es un círculo de luces. Burda es un círculo de luces. Burda es un círculo de luces.
So yeah, there you have it. That's a very, very interesting video. Described to be red, blue, and green. Some were flashing, pulsating, changing colors, not moving like a plane or a drone. In fact, they look quite stationary there. And also, you want to point out that they did contact the military to see if there was some kind of operation going on or if they had some kind of identification, and the military had not responded yet. So yeah, that's the gist of this story. So what I went ahead and did is I took some screenshots here of these lights, and one thing we can do. So right now I'm using Adobe Photoshop. It's a program very useful in doing image analysis. I've used this program to look at NASA footage and NASA imagery to identify cropping or image obfuscation, but also to look at things that may be hidden there that people in NASA hadn't noticed before. So here Here's a picture of a screenshot here, the close-up, shot by that NBC7 news crew with the primary magenta strobe light that appears, I think about 3 times, pretty steadily paced. I think it blinks every 3 seconds or so, 2 or 3 seconds. But one thing we can do here is we can find edges. So this is a filter in Photoshop that lets you identify where edges of objects in an image appear. So this is a power line that was in the NBC News crew's frame of reference. And here is what I like to call the UFO cluster. And that's another point I'd like to bring up. So I've been following this story my entire life, the UFO story, and in the last 5 years or so, the appearance of clusters of lights has become incredibly more prevalent. It's very rarely anymore a metallic saucer flying around. It is sometimes, but the main primary and most often occurrence are these clusters. They can be found in Brazil. I have a video called Strange Sky Phenomena Escalating Worldwide, where at the end of that video you see a very prominent cluster, like very similar to this, come from high above in the atmosphere, fall down in Indianapolis, and form a cluster formation like this. So these are becoming more frequent. Anyway, but one thing we can do here, we can brighten the edges, so we can get a little bit more detail out of here. These, this sort of patchwork is image artifacts. So this is not really there. That's just kind of the pixels involved with the camera sensors. But this is a real edge. This is the power lines, and these are real edges. These circular edges of lights. One thing I find interesting is that it doesn't seem to have much structure to it. I would say that these are separate objects in formation rather than parts of a whole that's just invisible. I think that you'd be able to see, like you do here, edges of a singular structural craft. That being said, though, distance is a factor. So this could be so far away that the camera just didn't pick up the data regarding the edges connecting them. So that's just, in all fairness, it could be either. But I just wanted to point that out, and also just to kind of introduce you all, if you hadn't known about it yet, to a method of finding structural attributes in an image. Another thing that was brought up is how far away is this object? I found an interesting article here about finding clouds and chemtrails and contrails and finding the distance and how you can use horizons to identify that. So, I found this article. I thought that was pretty neat. One thing to notice is, so here they use this as the control. So these mountains are approximately 15 miles away from the vantage point here. Based on the degrees upward, they're able to approximate how far away the object is that they're trying to figure out how far away it is. We got this here. I just took this screenshot. I'm going to copy and paste this. Okay, so they're not the same aspect ratio or size here, so I'm just going to do a quick little bit of a resizing to make it fit into the image a little bit better. You'll notice that it's much wider. But that's okay, because as long as the height is the same, it'll be useful for our purposes. So we're going to accept this transformation here. And then we are going to go over here and make it thinner. Okay. So this at least helps us get an extremely rough approximation using degrees of height from the perspective of the viewer, from the photographer, of how far away these might be. And as you notice, as you go up, they get closer. So, arguably this could be 6-10 miles away, maybe. I'm not really sure. This isn't my strong point, but I just wanted to point it out that, it is possible to take the distance from the horizon. Actually, maybe this would be a better. So here, yeah, okay, so this looks like there's some mountains here. Seems like there's some mountains here in the background. So if we actually readjust this, yeah, that might actually be a better approximation. So here's 22 miles away of something in the sky. Higher up you go, it decreases a little bit. Maybe these are 10 miles away, something like that, high in the sky. So I don't know. I just wanted to point that out. If somebody's better at that than I am, I'd be very interested in hearing about that in the comments section. But I just thought that was a pretty cool thing. I wanted to point that out. All right, so now I'm back on this image. Again, this is the close-up. Something interesting we can do to try to find any sort of structural information that might be kind of hidden in the image is we can go ahead and we can, we can go ahead and we can invert it. And so here, this is just the polar opposite of the light color that's coming out. The red lights you can see are this light blue. The brighter magenta styled lights are this yellow. The black power line is almost perfect white there. What I think is revealing about this is, again, very little structure is revealed here. It could be the distance, but I have to say, if it was something like a radio tower that was nearby, nearby in the distance, maybe 10 to 15 miles away, that you'd probably be able to see some kind of structure here. And that also being said is, what kind of configuration of a radio tower is going to look like this? That's just like, I don't know. I mean, arguably you could say maybe these are lights of a ground facility or something like that, but I don't know. I mean, at some point you just might have to say it's not a radio tower. I mean, I don't know who would make a radio tower that looks like that in that configuration. Let's undo that. Okay, so to go off of, this is probably not a radio tower. To look at this image here, so this is a screen capture of the wide view of, again, the NBC7 news crew filmed this. This isn't, Joe Schmo in his backyard trying to hoax everybody. If you take a look at this picture, you can see how high up this is. So here's this like mountain range, hills, stuff like that. They're clearly visible. And then there's just this like blank space, the sky. If here is a mountain, this is what a hill looks like. That's the color of a hill with a little tower on top of it. If you go up here, I mean, that's clearly in the sky. It's not, there's not a mountain somehow obfuscated here. And that's another one of those debunking theories that came up. I mean, this is what a hill looks like in this environment, in this photo, this is clearly not. I mean, this would be a mountain so high up, it's just not possible. So it's not an obfuscated hillside with lights, buildings, or something like that on it. It's definitely not that. Another theory that was posited, of course, is the blimp theory. So I went ahead and I just did some searches for what blimps look like at night. Here they look, well, they have advertisements on them and words. They have, and this one looks perhaps like a big glowing cylinder UFO. Blimps can definitely be mistaken for UFOs whenever they're just these big glowing cigar-shaped objects moving slowly through the sky. And maybe you're far away distance from it, and it just kind of, it might look like a UFO as a big glowing cigar. But that's not what we see here. I mean, this is totally different. I went ahead and I found this. I mean, this is what a blimp looks like at night. It has words that come across it. It'll have perhaps 2 to 3 to 4 running lights in strategic positions, forward, aft, bottom of the ship. I forget what that's called, but the bottom of the blimp will have a running light, and it'll have a strobe light like this. Now, you notice, you see that pattern? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That is standard on all aircraft. So that is the blinking pattern of a running light. Which is very different from what we see here. Compared to this. And they do that for a reason. Running lights are supposed to have a specific pattern to them. Blink, 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 blink. It's supposed to identify itself as a man-made vehicle moving, in the air. That steady flashing is different than civilian aircraft running lights, significantly. This does not look like that. It's not the right shape. It's too far away and high up. And just even considering, I mean, the space that this occupies. I mean, I'm sure you've looked up in the night sky and you've seen an aircraft flying by. It looks like maybe one of those dots. So to say this is the outline of a blimp, I mean, that's a greater leap of faith than it's an ET visitation. I mean, that is just kind of lying to yourself at that point. I mean, this formation is too large in the sky relative to the ground to be a blimp. To mention that on the video that Ben and I and Billy did yesterday discussing this I received a very interesting message from a fan. Hey, you should check out the most recent um, Ancient Aliens episode called "The Vanishing." The episode covered the Pleiades star cluster constellation, and I found that very interesting that was brought up in that episode. And I did a little bit of research, and I looked into just kind of the backstory of the Pleiades star constellation and all that stuff. So here's just excuse me. So here's just some background to the Pleiades star cluster in humanity's culture and folklore and history and tradition. And it's very interesting. It's discussed in the Bible, Egyptian history, Japan history. Now, of course, it's a prevalent star cluster, and like all constellations, it's going to be discussed. Like all constellations were. But what I found most interesting is Native Americans and their relationship to the Pleiades star cluster. And I am somebody who very, very, very much respects Native American history and culture and society. And I personally believe that it was their ancient peoples that were, I don't want to say the most connected with extraterrestrial beings, but definitely one of the most in America, which is where this San Diego sighting happened. So it discusses some of the the background to how the Pleiades star cluster, how they interpreted it in their history and their culture. I found this interesting, that the Hopi considered themselves a direct descendant of the Pleiadians. It's kind of a goofy picture, but the point is that in the history and culture of a group of people well known for having a direct connection to extraterrestrials, that they felt that they were directly descended from there. I just find that very interesting. And ant people are remarkably similar to modern day understandings of gray aliens. All of this, connected to being descended from the Pleiadians. And anyway, so all, pretty much every major ancient civilization had a special connection to the star cluster. And that got me thinking. That actually got me pretty excited. And I went and took up an image of the Pleiadian star cluster. So this is shot by an astronomer using a DSLR camera connected to, I forget the exact lens, but this is a real image from a telescope, obviously, with a camera. So this is a real picture of the Pleiadian star cluster. And immediately I said, wow, that kind of looks like that. And I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. So I went and took this, copied it, came over to here. What I'm doing now is changing the blending ratio so that it's a little bit transparent. Maybe a little less, okay. And now we're going to have to adjust the size of this image. So the Pleiadian star cluster photo in the background was taken with an extremely high resolution camera. It's consumer grade, but it's some of the best consumer grade that you can get. This video shot by the news crew and then re-uploaded to YouTube, downloaded to YouTube. It's also just a portion of the full video. This is a lot less pixels than this, so that's why this square comes out so much smaller. I'm just trying to explain, the process I'm doing here. So anyway, you can then do this. Now, by holding Shift in Adobe Photoshop, you can lock the aspect ratio. So this is increasing proportionally. It's locked, so the proportions are going to be the same. Then I was like, wow, these are starting to line up. So you have these three here, line up. And then you can rotate it. Oh, sorry about that. I should have done this. So what happened there is by pulling this, it stretched the image. By pulling the corner, it locks the aspect ratio. Now, I mean, that's pretty interesting to me. So here's a light in the San Diego sky. Nobody knows where it came from, and it just happens to match a star cluster constellation that has been culturally known throughout every disparate ancient Earth civilization to be special, of which the Hopi Indians, again, I said that the Native Americans, I feel like, do have a very close connection to the extraterrestrial ancient alien hypothesis, say that they are direct descendants of a Pleiadian society. And here in 2015, we have an unusual cluster of lights appear over San Diego, filmed by a news crew, which just happens to match the Pleiades star cluster. Assume for a second that this is an extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial, unknown intelligence at work here. Let's just assume that. We could argue forever why it's not, why it is, blah, blah, blah. Let's just assume it is for the sake of argument and to have some, speculation here. In the video with Ben that we did yesterday, we talked about how I brought up the idea that we transmit prime numbers through the SETI program as a way to basically say, hey, we're an intelligent civilization. We understand the concept of prime numbers in mathematics. So regardless of what language you speak or how your culture has developed, you're going to be able to tell that we're an intelligent species because we understand prime numbers. Now, throughout the history of ancient civilization, there's been this obsession with stars, with constellations, with gods and visitors and beings who live in the sky and created humanity. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that their version of prime numbers, of transmitting prime numbers to say, hey, we are here, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they would go and hover above major U.S. cities, major cities anywhere in the world, and form star constellations and say, hey, don't you recognize this? We are star people. We are in your history. We are in your culture. We've always been there.